Beank and Rosa is one of the most interesting manga I've read. It's about Beank and Rosa, two orphans living in an abandoned RV, working a mysterious job. In the first chapter, they get off at the last train station because they got lost, and Beank feels down about it. He talks about how they can't go home anymore, that they have to spend the rest of their lives there, even though it wasn't even the last train. They could easily catch one in the opposite direction to head to where they need to go. Meanwhile, in the second chapter, we focus on a completely new character who is obsessed with meat. Later on, she learns how to draw a delicious-looking one from a Colonel Sanders lookalike. Moving on, in the following chapter, we are introduced to a girl who wants to draw a battle manga, unknowingly consulting it with someone who is essentially living one. It's one weird chapter after another, but each is still connected to the main duo in some manner. Being weird is not all the series has to offer, though. There's also a shonen manga story underneath, featuring a battle between humans and non-humans, a setup you've probably seen before, with a lot of the familiar ingredients too. Someone who transforms into the opposite kind, someone who's against their own kind, and someone who questions why both sides fight in the first place, which can be intriguing on its own, but I really dig how it's handled here, for the most part. In one chapter, the main characters can be seen wearing a mask, and are on the way for what seems like a heist mission. You know how many pages that part had? Only 4 pages. It is not the focus of the chapter. You only get glimpses of this story throughout the series. It's like the opposite of shonen manga, an anti-shounen one, if you will. And I think it's refreshing and brilliant. Except for one part. There's a chapter solely dedicated to exposition dumps. It goes in depth into the background plot in a way that kills both pacing and sense of intrigue, which is a shame. Then again, if you don't have any clue to what's going on until that point, this chapter might just be the helping hand you need. Now let's talk about the visual experience, which I am a big fan of. There's just something mesmerizing about the combination of how things sort of jump from one panel to the next, the lack of motion lines, and the mangaka's charming but unpolished art. It made me flip back and forth between pages on my first time reading the series. Lastly, I want to talk about how it ends. While the story does build up towards its ending, I can't help but feel somewhat disappointed at first, it being more abrupt than I expected. However, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense in the context of the series. The ending lines up with the storytelling style, how we only get to see bits of Beank and Rosa's lives. Although I'm still curious about how a more conventional ending would play out, I admit this one fits the rest of the story well. Overall, Beank and Rosa is an interesting ride, offering a unique storytelling style that is supported by its charming art with glimpses of a more familiar story underneath. It left an impression on me, and I think you should give it a go.